Hi, it's Alison from the Law School Toolbox. Today, we're diving into essential tips for 3Ls who are gearing up for the bar exam. We'll cover everything from choosing a bar exam review provider to early study prep, accommodations, and getting life in order before the madness begins.
Oh, yes, the madness.
The madness.
Well, before we jump in, though, we have a few disclaimers. Because this advice is geared towards the bar exams that are going to be given before the next gen transition coming up in 2026. We still have a bunch of unanswered questions about what that will look like, and we will continue to address those in future episodes. We do have other episodes on the next gen that we can link to in the show notes, but it's a little behind because they haven't released everything they said they were going to.
Yeah, that was supposed to come out in the summer. It's now early December. We still don't have a full exam. So I don't know. Maybe they'll hit the second one because they were supposed to be doing 2 per year, as I recall.
Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, so stay tuned for more about the next gen bar. And if you are going to sit for the bar in California, you might also be wondering what's going on with the California bar. Well, glad you asked because it's a mess over here as we're helping people prepare for the February bar. If you're going to be studying for the California bar in 2025, we have linked to our YouTube playlist where we have been doing some periodic updates on what's been happening with the California bar. We'll link to them in our show notes, and we're going to continue releasing things to that playlist so you can get up-to-date information as soon as we know it. And sometimes we're funny.
Awesome.
And sometimes we're funny.
Yeah, now I was just talking to someone this morning about this. So yeah, as soon as we know something, we will post a video so you can know it too.
Yeah. So with those disclaimers, let's jump right into some common questions we get on the topic of how 3Ls are supposed to get ready for the bar exam. When should 3Ls start thinking about bar prep seriously?
Well, I would say if you're a 3L and you're listening to this and you haven't thought about it yet, probably now.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think so. I mean, like we said, this is December, but if you haven't already done so already, typically by the fall, you want to start exploring your bar prep providers and assessing your individual needs. You know a lot about how you study and how you take tests, and you want to start putting that information to use as you evaluate your bar prep options. Now, bar prep companies have probably been lining the halls of your law school for 3 years. But maybe you haven't signed up for one. And if you want to learn about each one, compare pricing, because boy, can the pricing be very different, and also what their offerings are. Sometimes you can test out their free resources for the MPRE, so you can see how you like them, because they are a bit different, although a lot of them are also offering something very similar. So it's like a similar but different situation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look at what your school's offering too. If your school has bar prep classes, your final semester, that can be a good option. If they have things for you in the summer, which some of them are doing now, you want to be sure you understand what those options are so that you can understand what you might need to purchase. In some cases, maybe the school is going to give you an option. You need to evaluate whether that's going to work for you or not work for you, whether you need to supplement that. There's no kind of one size fits all solution here. I think it's about finding the right fit.
Yeah. You also want to think about your own strengths and weaknesses, based on how you performed in law school. Are there areas in which you struggled? Was first year kind of a mess for you? Do you not remember anything from those 1L classes? So you may have information that you want to really sit with to make thoughtful choices, especially based on your first year performance. If you struggled in your first year, that's a sign that you may need to be even more strategic about your bar prep.
Yeah, definitely. When we find people who failed and we're talking to them, I often ask them about that first year and they say, well, it was a bit of a struggle. And you see that, that's the reality. You see that those courses were not necessarily learned and internalized and remembered. Maybe some of those writing skills were not really honed and you moved on to paper classes or something after that. So a lot of the first year stuff does kind of follow through and follow you onto the bar exam, unfortunately.
Yeah. The other thing that's important is you got to pick where you're going to take the test. So...
True.
And that can be easier said than done because sometimes your job may be still up in the air. I mean, even when you took the bar, you ended up taking Massachusetts because of your clerkship. And that, I'm sure, wasn't your original plan.
Well, I couldn't decide whether I was going to work permanently in New York, where I was in school, or in California, where I had come to school from. And I was just going back and forth to the point that I talked myself out of taking the bar completely. And the judge I worked for just said, no, you need to take the bar exam someplace. So he suggested Massachusetts, which at the time had an extremely high pass rate. So I did that. And then later, when I decided to come back to California, I took the California bar as well.
Yeah. So you definitely want to start thinking about those options and weighing what makes the most sense. Also look at reciprocity, which is whether or not a score from one jurisdiction could transfer over to another jurisdiction, especially if you're not 100% sure where you want to be. But it's great to look at that stuff, not over the summer while you're trying to study for the bar. You want to have those answers beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, the UBE makes everything a lot easier. I would have just taken the UBE and I could have used it in Massachusetts or New York. Maybe I would never even have moved back to California at that point because I would have had the UBE score in New York and I would have just thought it seemed easier. Who knows? Life-changing decision, actually, where you take the bar.
That's true.
Well, thanks for watching that one, and come back and check out our next question. And check out Bar Exam Toolbox if you want to reach out or learn more.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe, like, and leave us a comment if you have any other questions you would like us to answer in future episodes.